Hi, folks. Welcome to Hat Friday. I don't have to fine anybody. Everybody's remembered. Although I have to say, Phil, your first hat was better than your second one.
What you got in your head, the new?
Feed at least in my
that's better. Right, see it now.
Oh, there we go.
Your first hat was better.
Was it?
Yeah, put the first one on. This is kind of a Labour
This
guy.
one.
Okay.
I've got loads. Port Leith dressing up, you know.
So while Phil fiddles with his hats, we're going to have a chat about that guy whose name has already been forgotten for the Labour Party. We're going to have a chat about, a very brief chat, I would think, about Jeane Freeman's press conference today. Nicola wasn't about. And I think we're going to have to talk about the latest guest writer on wings. So we'll kick off with a presser. Anything strike anybody about Jeane Freeman's press conference today?
Yes, I do hope that a large amount of people tuned in and didn't switch off when they realised it was Nicola. Because when we got to the questions, I think it was self-evident just how anti-Scottish and anti-SNP the entire media were, as they tried to make the whole press conference a hatchet job about a mistake that Jeane Freeman made earlier in the week. And I loved her combative tone, particularly loved her thanking the representative from the Sun for telling her exactly what the Scottish Conservatives were saying about her, because she always finds that interesting.
She was good about it, but apparently they made a mistake by publishing the location of, she made a mistake by announcing a location of one of the secure storage facilities for the vaccine, and also we already knew about the government publishing their accidentally publishing the amount of doses that were coming and had been ordered. So it was a double mistake. But you're right. You're right, Jim.
This is the same figures that the government had already made public. The UK.
Yeah, but they didn't want the Scottish government publishing anything that might show them in a bad light. Like, why is it taking quite so long to get doses of vaccine to Scotland? So why was it only last night that Nadeem Zahawi said that he now has figures or a guaranteed delivery schedule up until the end of February? You know, we're in the middle of January, and the delivery schedule was only guaranteed to the end of January until yesterday.
So do we know how secure this place is? Is it surrounded by tanks, or is it just a big warehouse with freezers?
Well, somebody decided to mention the security services. I thought you weren't even meant to mention it if you were on the official media.
Aye, but they're desperately trying to make this into something much larger. As I say, they've brought up the ministerial code, which apparently you must adhere to at all times if you're Scottish, but it doesn't matter one iota if you're English.
All right.
How has she possibly broken it?
Who?
Well,
Jeane Freeman. How can she have broken the code?
She's revealed privileged information.
Okay.
Which is an automatic breach, but you'll forgive me, Priti Patel went to Israel and handed the Israeli government reams of privileged information and is now Home Secretary.
I'm quite happy for them all to resign, the whole SNP government.
So would that be, mate, because they'd win in a bloody landslide next week.
Yeah, so I'm happy for that to happen.
By the way, Nori, you're looking very much like a famous Cuban leader today.
You're not supposed to tell anybody that's privileged information, mate. I've been in hiding from the CIA for many years.
You developed that Scottish accent beautifully.
Put that cigar away.
I don't think I've got a khaki hat in my wardrobe, unfortunately.
I've got a few shit ones. While we're on the presser, I just wanted to mention my apologies to people for pointing them towards question time last night, because I sat and watched it and I was throwing things at the telly. The utter propaganda that Fiona Bruce spat out every time she went to Philippa Whitford was embarrassing last night. I know the BBC are a propaganda outlet per se, and Fiona Bruce is basically just doing what she's told when she's handed the script, because she's got to protect her 800 grand a year salary. But it was embarrassing last night, and that will be the last time I watch Question Time.
I did. As soon as I realised that Philippa was on the line, you know, on the screen, and the other people that mattered were in the studio, I thought, oh, waste of time.
I didn't even bother with it. I've given up on it now. Okay.
The presser, I mean, there were some announcements that made me very annoyed. Care at home workers, the people that go, if you're stuck in home and you're in your home and you're disabled and you need care at home, the people that come round and look after you, they announced that you're going to start getting tested even if you're asymptomatic by the end of January. Now I'm thinking that's nearly a year late. I'm not happy with that. Mobile testing, that was quite interesting. At the moment, they've got 18 mobile testing units. That's probably got something to do with the army. They're going to, by the end of March, they're going to be 42.
It's actually the Scottish Ambulance Service.
Oh, Scottish, well done. They're going to have effectively 84 locations with mobile testing all at the same time. I'm not going to say that's late. And then they also announced that they're finally going to test the water, wastewater testing, which to find out they can test the water to find out if a particular virus is being pissed down the lavvy. But they were testing in Italy before they discovered that the virus was in Italy before we even heard about it on the news. It was there in December.
Right, maybe we weren't testing for COVID back in 1842, Stuart, but they've been testing for it ever since a test was devised for it. They're simply quadrupling the amount of testing. So they've been testing for it all along since they had a test.
On the other hand, I was impressed with Jason Leitch having a go at the vaccine deniers. They did, he really, he was good on that. What did you think?
I think Jason Leitch is excellent, first class. If it ever gets to the point that Lord Fuchs, sorry, I didn't really hit a policeman, gets his way and gets Nicola off the daily briefing, Jason Leitch is the man that should front it.
Apparently that, Nori, the story with that was he didn't hit a policeman. Apparently he'd imbibed a bit too much. And went down an escalator too fast and ran into the copper.
That's out of character for George. I remember meeting him in Prague when I went to watch Hearts play there, and he was absolutely ripped to his nut. And that was a good 4 hours before the game.
Allegedly.
No, seriously, mate. He couldn't find it, never mind hold it when he was trying to use it. And just before we move on, I watched a bit of the BBC One coverage again today, and they had the joyless fun sucker that is Sarah Boyack on. Didn't bother asking her a question about Labour Party politics till the programme was almost over, obviously, because they had to let her get her attack in on the SNP. And Sarah Boyack, being a typical Labour MSP, i.e. thick as mince, was going on about airport testing and how shocking it is the airport testing is only now starting to happen in Scotland, and how she feels it's her duty to hold the Scottish Government to account about that. Well, Sarah Doll, the airports and the borders are administered by the UK Government, just in case you're too stupid to understand that. So why don't you go and try and hold them to account?
A very nice one, Jim. There's one last thing. The Scott McNabb of the Scotsman, he asked a stupid question, another stupid question. He asked, how can you have an election with the state of the pandemic, basically? And Jeane Freeman said, well, everybody's got the right to exercise a vote on their government.
Well,
Yeah.
I mean, it's not as if they've ignored it. They've got agreed plans in place, agreed by the Scottish Parliament. I mean,
That's why I called it a
know,
stupid question.
We know this is a political argument, but
Yeah.
you know, it's just another. Well, I was about to say it's another case of ignoring what's already there to be researched.
Mm. Well, it's idiocy run wild when he said if it was tomorrow, for example. But he did basically that was just handing Jeane Freeman a big stick to slap him in the head with when she pointed out, it's actually not tomorrow. It's 4.5 months away, mate. And the speed that this pandemic moves it, if you think it won't be different in 4.5 months, you're a bigger arse than two bumps.
Aye, if it was tomorrow, you're a bit late in asking the question.
Just a tad, eh?
Right, let's give Phil a chance to defend his friend, Sarah Boyack.
Correct answer, Philip.
I thought she was a pal of yours.
She's like I knew Sarah before she was in the Labour Party. Before that, she was part of Scottish Environmental Resource something or other. Sarah, it came out as, yeah. And then Labour started getting a bit greeny. She joined the Labour, and that she's always been sort of on the environmental side.
Are you not quite impressed with her? I thought you always quite liked her as a politician.
No, I like Sarah as a person, but then I think the whole lot. And when they were different when they first started, Sarah, but they've all kind of turned into this lump that should really go away and let some new people in. All these ones, which will come to anyway, that have caused all this, what I would call the rather slow suicide of Scottish Labour. And when you have, and they're all in there, you know, suicide is not painless.
No, it's not. Right, okay, so the Scottish branch manager has resigned. Richard Leonard is named mayor.
Well, can I give you a bit on that?
Yeah, you give us it from the party members' point of view.
Well, I've got it from the party members. I've got my view on it, and it was first heard as it was reported that he's resigned. He thought about it over the festive period and decided it would be the best thing to do, which was a load of bullshit, actually. What happened was, according to Neil Findlay, who's got an article in a Tribune, anybody wants that, just Google Tribune, Neil Findlay, and as he started off, his understanding, it was not MSPs who finally got rid of Richard, right, of it in the sense that he realised he should have resigned, nor was it party members. It was a group of millionaire potential party donors who delivered the fatal blow. They're talking to them because they're losing so many party members, that equals cash. A meeting was held on Wednesday night. Angela Rayner, you'll not believe the next two, Jackie Bailey and Ian Murray met with wealthy peers and donors, and it was made clear that no money would be donated unless Leonard was removed and Anas Sarwar installed as leader. This was reported then to Richard, who asked him to stand down. If he refused, the plan was to have a vote of no confidence, blah, blah, blah. But apparently what they did, they got the Don. They got the Don in London, the leader, to phone him up and tell him to resign.
Can I ask you, Phil, who are these rich millionaires? I only saw one name, Willie Hockey. I thought he ran one of these arm's length companies in Glasgow, and he was a protege of who was that? Steve somebody or other who was the Glasgow provost or something. Who was found out taking loads of cocaine with little boys.
Yeah, always have these sleazy types, millionaires usually, or whatever, hanging about. You've seen them the way they all jumped onto Tony Blair and everything else, you know. Yeah, it's sad actually. Yeah,
I think we know the.
Well, am I wrong about Willie
Well,
Hockey?
Willie Hockey was a fridge magnate, no magnet, but magnate. He had a dodgy refrigeration company that made him an awful lot of money. He bought into Celtic at one point as well, when Celtic were on their uppers for cash, and Willie was in amongst that nonsense for a wee while.
All right.
But, I think we all know the truth here. The Labour Party is pretty skint. Scottish Labour are dead skint, so they went to the Labour Party and asked them to fund the campaign. And the Labour Party have said no, because they can't afford it. The reality is we're probably going to have a campaign mostly funded by Anna Sarwar's old man. Mo Sarwar will put in $750,000 or something for a campaign as long as his laddie gets a job.
Does his dad sell that guy's fridges in his cash and carry?
It's probably chock full of them, mate, but his old man's kind of kept a low profile since he got tossed out the Punjab for being too bloody crooked, even for Indian politics. So
it didn't last long in India.
The multi-millionaire protege son who doesn't bother paying his staff the living wage that we've now to look up to.
Yep.
So is there anybody that they could put into the leadership role that would make any difference to them?
No.
Well, they are talking about Monica Lennon, maybe, but she hasn't been here that long. To my mind, the one I had for leader, because he leaves you no doubt about what he thinks, would have been the likes of Neil Findlay. He's a good.
Neil Findlay's retiring.
No, well, that's to me, that's what Labour politicians were like. When you start thinking when I was a kid and you're coming up and what politicians were like, when I think of the people who used to be in the House of Commons in the 60s, the 70s and 80s, if you look at them now, man. Yeah.
Oh, come on.
You could keep the chippy going for years.
Are you going to suggest, like, the most popular name I've heard in the last 24 hours to lead Scottish Labour has been Gordon Brown?
I've heard that one. I mean, sorry.
He's not eligible.
That is just, it's dinosaurs. That's all they are. You know, they just take a long time to die out.
Wait a minute. We're talking about Labour Party here. What do you mean not eligible, Jimmy?
He's not eligible to be the leader of the Scottish Labour, mate. You have to be a representative. Gordon Brown may be a party member, but that's all he is. You have to be an MSP, an MP, or a councillor to lead the party.
I've heard two other names.
Come on, then.
They're both from South Edinburgh. You imagine that the new leader of the Scottish Labour Party with his butcher's apron jacket on. You know what I mean?
Oh, aye. A Union Jack suit.
Aye. But let's be up.
Ian Murray.
I mean, it's just, well, there's not that many of them left. They're looking.
Ian Murray's too smart to be Labour leader. Just put that out there. I mean, why would anybody with any ambition, and Ian Murray has got ambition.
Sure.
He wants to be in a cabinet. There's no way he would stand for the Labour leadership.
No, but he would quite like it if his mate Annas got it, because he knows that Annas is thick as mince, so he could be behind the scenes being a handler without actually having to be committed to anything.
There's a point.
Well, if they put in any of that right-wing Labour clique, you know, if they stick in a certified executioner for Scottish Labour, I've been a Labour member for 40 years, but I did take a sabbatical for the time Jim Murphy was leading.
I was going to ask about that because I thought you left
that was
for a while.
too far.
Mm-hmm.
I always remember it, 14th of December, 2014, I think, or something like that. That was it. 10 to 11, it came on BBC Scotland. I was at my bedshed, up at the bank within 40 minutes just before it shut, so I could cancel my direct debit. You know.
Okay. I think it's a shoe-in that Annas is getting the job because Jackie Baillie insisted at the meeting that he be put into position. So if Jackie Baillie, as interim leader, insists that Annas gets the job, it will happen. I think the problem they've got is that by having him as leader, what they're doing is specifically targeting the no surrender vote. The British Unionist vote that the Tories get, they are targeting that. They think that's where their future lies. And without being too polite about it, quite a lot of the no surrender support won't vote for Annas Sarwar because of the colour of his skin. As well as being bigoted, they're racist. That's who they are.
But this isn't members or anybody. This is a group of businessmen, millionaires, telling the Labour Party what to do in Scotland. Meanwhile, down at the head office in London, you've got the Israeli government telling them what to do. You know, I'm sorry, I'd like to see the Labour Party run for what it was meant to be. The general public, for people, not for vested interests.
That Labour Party no longer exists, Phil.
No, it doesn't. It's just turning in. Well, they always had it. If you looked at the Blairites, a lot of them, they were all Atlanticists. And they all wanted to turn the Labour Party into the Democrat Party. Yeah. That's what they were. And that's what they're proceeding to do. You know?
Well, have you got an opinion on this?
Oh, well, yes. I mean, I did have a quote from Neil Findlay, but Jim there summed it up quicker and shorter.
I think Phil's right. I think they are trying to turn it into the Democratic Party. And the reason that they're trying to do that is because if you can get yourself involved in democratic politics, it's a lifelong career and a very profitable one, a very lucrative one. And that's what the small cabal around Keir Starmer and the small cabal that will presumably form around Anas Sarwar, that's what they're interested in, is a career and having money in their back pocket.
That's what it's always been since Blair.
Can I ask a couple of questions here then? Right. Does this finally put the coffin lid nailed down, sealed, and thrown in the grave of the idea that Scottish Labour is in any way independent from London?
Okay.
Oh, it's definitely not independent from London.
I thought you were going to ask about the future of Scottish Labour. Well, this puts a cap on it. It's even worse than it was yesterday.
I think what it disastrously does as well, though, Norrie, is particularly for Scottish Labour and for those people who consider themselves Labour voters, it puts an end completely to any chance of Labour seeing sense and backing the people of Scotland taking control of their own affairs. It absolutely 100% makes Labour a unionist party in control of unionists, and the voices who, and there were a few within Scottish Labour still, who are trying to say to them, look, the majority verdict of the Scottish people isn't where we are. Why are we trying to chase a tiny amount of voters on the right?
Okay,
you're not going to get those voices.
Second question. I suppose, well, it's kind of two questions. Is this going to be a coronation? Is Sarwar's a shoo-in? Or will they hold an election?
They'll probably hold an election. They'll need to. I mean, it's the whole thing's illegitimate enough. But just another bit of information, because a light went on when Jimmy was there talking about with Scotland and referendum. But it's more than that. It's not just about, you can't talk about the referendum. Because Richard Leonard had to cheat to be the leader of a Scottish political party in a Scottish parliament who didn't vote for the deal, you know, when they were told to which Leonard had replied to head office that basically it's devolved. We were not consulted by this, which we should have. So, and 62% of the Scottish population, so we're here to represent Scotland. So
I wasn't sure what deal you were talking about. The Brexit deal.
Yeah, the Brexit deal. But when the Scottish Parliament voted to, you know, reject it.
All right.
Okay. So if they're going to hold an election, what happens if Monica Lennon wins? Does that mean funding for the next election gets
Monica Lennon is hamstrung. She can't win. I don't think she'll stand. I think she's there as window dressing. She took, I've said before, she took a promotion within the party to shut her mouth and go quiet about somebody senior in the party that she said had harassed her. That will be held over her. That will be said, look, you betrayed your sisters to advance yourself. If you stand, this is all coming out, and it'll all come out in the front page of the Daily Record, because as we all know, Anas has a couple of boys at the Record actually on a retainer.
Yeah, Neil Findlay tells you all about that.
So, third question, last question from me. Why is Bulmer Bailey so powerful in all this? What's she got? Is she the only smart one in the Parliament?
No, it's just that it's extremely difficult to get rid of MPs, MSPs. That's the whole idea. Again, latching on what Jimmy says, the whole thing is to turn it into a career, you know. And apart from that as well,
why was Bomber Bailey at the meeting?
I'm beginning to think that Bomber Bailey, Norrie, might be the one that has, you know how they always said that Hoover had his files on everything and everybody? Aye. I think Bomber Bailey's got the Scottish Labour Party version of the Hoover files in her handbag, and that keeps her in a very powerful position.
She's deputy leader, and it was about the leader, so the leader obviously wouldn't be there. So she's the deputy leader, second in charge. Well, that's why
she's... Yeah, but didn't she get voted? Didn't she actually win an election to become deputy leader? She must have a base then within the Scottish Party.
Oh, in the Scottish Party.
The last 7-8 years, she's always been sniffing about the base of the throne.
Oh,
you know, I mean, I don't know what, as Jimmy says, maybe she's got the black book.
Right.
I'm just surprised that she doesn't want it.
One of those will get it. One of the right wing will get it, because we've had, that's why they're looking for the money. Whole loads have left. I know in North Edinburgh and Leith, people have left. In other constituencies, they're piling out after what Starmer did. Now, with this, so you've got less in the party to vote for the likes of Monica Lennon. These are the ones that have left. And it's always been, that's why they have such a control. Actually, Scottish Labour is more Blairite and more right-wing than a lot of the Labour parties down south.
It's definitely because they've lost most of their left-wing to the Greens, to the SNP.
Uber.
Will it make any difference? Is there any reason for the SNP government to be scared of the new leader of Scottish Labour?
Sorry, they're irrelevant. In a third party anyway, they're irrelevant. They should sort their own house out.
Jimmy summed it up. They are only going up this election. They're only going after Tory voters because that's the only voters they can possibly get back.
I worry about it though, because when you talk about Scottish Labour, I think what you're really talking about is Ouija Labour, because the West Coast has always been the heart of Scottish Labour. That's where the power lies.
The corrupt heart of Scottish Labour.
Yeah. And they have lost so much support there that basically what they're looking at, their electoral strategy for a once famous party, is have whoever's the new leader, Jackie Baillie and Monica Lennon, at the top of their lists, because they don't expect to win a single constituency seat. And they desperately need to have these people going back in. I mean, it's corrupt the way that they actually, how they're going to manage that, how they're going to manage their candidates, because if Sarwar wins, they'll have to move Lennon into somewhere like the Highlands to make sure that she gets back into Parliament.
Oh,
well, it was interesting yesterday. That was almost the first question that the TV journalists were saying about Leonard. Oh, he's already been guaranteed top of the list
for Central.
So he can keep
that was part of the deal for him to resign.
Is it just me that finds that disgusting that he's basically guaranteed himself another 5 years on 60 grand a year plus all his expenses and that, just to top up his pension pot, because he's not going to get a position in anybody's cabinet, and he'll just be a backbench. He doesn't even need to turn up. He'll get the money anyway.
There's not going to be enough a cabinet. There's not going to be enough for them to, for a draw in a cabinet. You know what I mean? There's they're irrelevant. I mean, a cabinet. Dear oh dear.
Right.
Phil, they still could very well finish second, because they will pick up. I think they'll pick up. Well, looking at the way that the Tories have lost votes since Douglas Ross became the leader, do you really think the Tories are going to finish second in the election this year? Because I don't know. I think the Labour will finish second on the list.
Actually,
overtake them.
Do you know whose hands it's in? Where Labour and the Tories finished. I don't know if anybody's read. Well, it's an article, big article by Peter Kellner. And if the SNP get their act together, the SNP and the Greens between them could have in the region of 90 plus seats. Overwhelming. All you have to do is you vote SNP first past the post, and your regional seat, you vote Green. that'll give them up to 30 or more seats, whereas at the moment they have 6. Do you think they've got the bottle to do that?
But you'll forgive me, but I wouldn't trust Paddy Harvey and his daft sidekick with a group that large in the Scottish Parliament.
I would only consider it. I would only consider it if I knew the SNP had an outright majority.
Yeah.
The
thing is, guys, on polling day, we kind of will, to an extent. If the SNP on election day are still polling at around 53, 54%, you can look at regional variations. That would still equate, even if things break down slightly differently, to about 50, 51. And at 51%, they win almost every constituency. So you could, in effect, go SNP 1, Green 2 with a fair amount of certainty.
Right. I mean, how many seats are they expected to get on 44% on the regional vote, also known as the
the last time they got in 2017.
2016, they got 4 seats.
4 seats.
4 seats of 41%.
And the more they get first past the post, the less, because that's the way it does, which is why the system can be screwed. They design the systems so no one party could get an overall majority. What they didn't think was that, maybe they could get 2 parties to join up for independence. So you have 2 parties. The Greens could sweep a huge lot. And, well, when you say you don't trust them, I mean, sorry, there's loads of
don't trust them.
Politicians in any party. But do you trust the Greens to vote for independence?
Don't trust them.
Yes, because it'll be for... It's the only way that they get those second votes is to have an absolute commitment to vote for independence in any parliamentary vote on it, and front and centre of their manifesto.
Stuart, you've hardly said a word all morning. Come on, what have you got on the table?
Joanna Cherry's got a very nice piece. She has raised a democratic deficit. Boris, the headline is simple. Oops, the wrong one. Here we go. But Joanna Cherry, how Boris Johnson has once again shut down MP scrutiny of his government. And this time it's the Select Committee, we'll call it the Brexit Select Committee. It's been shut down by Lord Haw-Haw, Jacob Rees-Mogg. The committee itself was set up to examine the negotiation for exiting the European Union. So the excuse is it can be shut down now that we've done so. However, given that 90% of the consequences of leaving the European Union have still to be suffered, it's a shocking democratic deficit that they've shut the committee down.
Phil, do you get first minute on this?
Well, what's new? Prorogue in Parliament, rules, regulations, everything don't apply to them. They do what they like and smirk. You know, I mean, when you look at them, I mean, they are such a decrepit, debauched bunch of morons. You know, I mean, that Pretty Patel, or Evil Patel, which is apparently a real name, you know, smirking at deaths. And I mean, what's the surprise?
Jimmy,
what's going to happen to them?
Yeah, I read the article. I'm no so vexed on the committee because I think the reality is the other committees will step in where this committee has now closed. As Stuart said, 90% of what's going to happen around Brexit hasn't happened yet. I'm mere vexed. It kind of occurred to me watching a bit of the coverage on the fishing story yesterday. You know, because it kind of steamrollered a bit, and BBC, ITV, they all had camera crews up here at various wee fishing villages asking them how things are going and how bad it's going to get. But it occurs to me, I'm wondering if the Tories are absolutely hell-bent on destroying the Scottish economy because that's their best bet for stopping us voting for independence. I mean, it's very small at the moment, but the fishing community, they didn't care if the fishing communities die. They didn't care if mining communities died, did they? No. This is all very reminiscent of Thatcher for me, you know, that destroying the seed potato industry just by not even talking about it. That was an entire industry. Our farms, our meat industry, our lamb industry, that could all get absolutely decimated by the Tories and they wouldn't care because they didn't need Scottish votes to stay in power. So I'm thinking that the entire thing, Thatcher destroyed our industry in the 80s, and that kept us away from independence for 30 years.
The Tories haven't got oil to fall back on the way that Thatcher had. One of the things I picked up
kind of have, Norrie, because they've got to the point where they have no oil revenue whatsoever at the moment. The tax take on oil is tiny, really, because they're giving it away.
Well, that's
make sure that we don't realise how valuable it is to us.
But the Treasury is going to lose money if they do destroy Scottish industry. Where do they replace it? Are they going to frack Scotland to bits?
Yeah,
possibly. Yeah.
But
one of the things that struck me about the Joanna Cherry piece was the importance that she put on these committees. And as I said earlier, I've never really believed that they were much use if you had ministers with a brass neck that this lot have got, because it's just an opportunity to question ministers. Now, you can make them look like total tumshees, but they just go ahead and do what they want anyway. There's no honour left. You can't embarrass them into making a reasonable decision.
Everything's changed with that. But everything changed with that 80-seat majority. Everything changed.
Yeah. So, closing down a committee is not what it once was. In my opinion, I think, and I do think the shame of it is that we've got MPs sitting in Parliament who think it's important. Okay, they'll get a headline for a day, but the Tories will go ahead and do whatever they want, regardless of headlines. I know they're already suggesting stopping the working time directive.
Yeah, that's front and centre of their offering for Parliament this year, isn't it? Just kill the European Working Time Directive, because why should a peasant be allowed to stop working after 48 hours when they've not made enough profit for their master yet?
So what's new?
That's a good line. I think that's the headline today.
But that's another out and out, blatant, red underlined, total gold plated lie.
Aye.
That told us they were not going to do it.
Mm.
And how these guys sitting up in Sunderland are going to feel when they're on the assembly line making go-karts for bairns 62 hours a week, I don't know.
Aye, for about 50% of the cash that they got when they were making decent cars for Nissan and selling them into Europe.
That plant is huge, and it really is. If that shuts down, the Nissan plant at Washington, it's
closing down
for the economy there.
It is closing down. It's not if. It's 8,000 jobs in an area that voted 70% to put themselves out of a job. I think that's called a self-inflicted injury. I'm sorry, I find it really hard to have sympathy. Yes, it's their families that were dependent on it. I'm feeling sorry, but these numpties that went out voted to destroy them and their families' futures. I mean, sorry.
But it's partly our fault. It's partly all our fault because we didn't get the message across. The message is completely controlled by a right-wing media owned by billionaires instructing millionaires to crush us. And we've all sat and watched that happen for the last 30 years and done virtually sod all about it.
Well, yeah.
Norrie and I had a go, didn't we, Norrie?
We did, Stuart. But, I'm kind of, you get to a point where you think the Tories destroyed your father's lives. Mm-hmm. What makes you think they're not going to destroy your lives? Oh, I know. Let's find out. Let's vote Tory.
Aye. I mean, it's astonishing the hatch. I mean, fair play to them. The hatchet job that they've done on Corbyn to have people thinking, and large amounts of people. It's not just one or two. It was millions of people believe that Jeremy Corbyn was some kind of anti-Semite and racist, and he spent his entire career campaigning against racism and campaigning for equalities. So their media is good, and their use of alternate media is outstanding. As I say, when you hear stuff coming out of people's mouths about this great reset and how Muslims are taking over Europe and what have you, it's getting out there and it's working. Nigel Farage was a fabulous figure for them. He genuinely had people believing that he was fighting for the working man. He's never been close to a working man in his lifetime other than to wipe his boots on them, for God's sake.
He's rubbed shoulders in the boozer with one or two, I think, Jimmy.
Aye, so he has a pint and a cigar and people think he's an avuncular character that's a working class hero at heart. Joke, absolute joke. That's why we need to get the hell away from England and let them fester in their own mess. Until the English people stand up for themselves, there's no way Scots or Welsh or Irish should spend any more time trying to save the English from themselves, because our countries are at great risk if we do so.
But see that comment you made about everybody thinks Muslims are coming over here to take it over. That's a cheat from a nation. Is there a country in the world that they haven't set on foot on shore with their gunships or that? So you've got this nation that's plundered, genocided, robbed, everything over centuries, and then it's complaining because someone comes and picks their pocket.
There is one little clue in this article by Joanna Cherry, which is the very last sentence. I don't know if you guys noticed it. It's about, it refers to the SNP NEC coup that took place at the virtual conference recently. What she says here: I also look forward to taking forward detailed work on the SNP policy on Scotland's future relationship with the EU, having already had some fruitful discussion about how this should be done with our new SNP policy convener, Chris Hanlon. I stuck it in right at the end, she has. I wonder why.
Well, I think that's probably because one of the few sticks that the unionist parties have to beat the SNP with is this policy that we will go straight back into the EU. And it's pretty easy to take that stick out of their hand by saying, let's have a discussion about EFTA membership, part membership of the EU, going back into the EU. As soon as you take away that policy that we will automatically reapply to join the EU, it takes that argument away from them.
Jim, I think they should keep the policy, well, you keep it dangling like a carrot for all those anti-Brexit people, those are Remainers that have switched to vote, they've decided they're going to vote SNP. Keep it there until this election's over, but definitely hold the possibility out there, yes. We'd rather go into EFTA first.
So the thing is, EFTA's a great starting point, because if you do that, you've got a lot of the benefits of membership without having to actually commit to membership.
Well, I think the way you plot this is say, yes, we want to join the EU, but we're quite prepared on the way to be member of EFTA and the other one. What's the other one?
Aye.
EEA. It's just effectively you're inside the market.
You know, we'll stop at those hotels on the way down the motorway to Europe.
Aye, absolutely. And it does. It takes that massive stick out of their hand, because it's all they have at the moment with the disastrous outcomes so far.
Currency.
But you'd take us back into the common fisheries policy. Well, actually, no, we wouldn't.
Oh, you don't want to go back to being able to sell your fish in Europe.
Exactly. Aye. It's a shock. I mean, Ian Blackford was on Newsnight last night, and as he put it, seriously, you're talking as if the CFP was a disaster. The guy's all made a living out of it for 30 years. Aye.
The good news is you can fish 10 times as much fish. Unfortunately, you can't sell any of them anywhere.
It settled down into a very wealthy, prosperous business, the fishing community here in Scotland.
Well, I didn't ken many poor people that work in that game, mate. Maybe the people in the processing plant, but other than that, everybody makes a decent living out of the game.
And I don't grudge them. It's not what you call light office.
Oh, it's very dangerous.
No, it's hard yak.
That's due to the EU, totally down to the EU, because you see what it's like if you left it to Westminster. And when you're talking about going into these other groups, only if it's like an overnight stay in a motel. I'm only interested in getting on a non-stop express right back to Brussels. Thank you very much.
You're one of these unreconstructed Labour people.
No, I'm totally. What do you mean unreconstructed? I'm a European. Got a European passport. I mean, if
you need to stop
reading isolated dunderheads, that's your point. That's your problem. Yes, you just stay on your wee island. You know what I mean? You can live on langoustines.
I could live on langoustines.
I could live on langoustines for the rest of my days, mate. Aye, but I'll tell you what though, I'd have to start growing garlic out in the front garden because they need to be in garlic butter. Oh,
you grow it on the windowsill? Garlic, you grow it all year if you do it on the windowsill.
Right. None of this gardening talk. Jimmy, anything else strike you today?
No, not really, mate. I think it's been an entertaining week. Let's just say I was delighted to see quite so many people were as offended as I was by Jacob Rees-Mogg's idiocy yesterday.
That was about the only laugh I got yesterday. Phil, anything that you particularly... You've got a whole week, mate. Nothing under your eyes.
Well, we spent most of the week talking about he said, she said. That was quite good today. But other than that, no. It's just I haven't got really anything to say because otherwise I'd go on too long just about the demise of the Labour Party, this, that, and the next thing. There's nothing new, particularly that's annoying me.
I was going to send you a donut, but you were the first one to mention it. So,
well, we never did get to Robin McAlpine's article, which I thought was an interesting read, given that he isn't an SNP loyalist in any way, shape, or form. But it's worth a butcher's hook people to go and search that out.
I think maybe the best thing,
Jimmy, I'm sure we'll get round to it, but I don't think we've got more than about 5 or 10 minutes left on this show anyway. So we're going to need a lot more than that.
I was quite like the way Robin tried to start the article by not mentioning any names.
Aye. He tried desperately hard for a while, eh?
just to let you know, the piece is on Source and on
Source News.
But
when did McAlpine get back friendly with Wings? I thought.
Well, it's common. I'm not sure about that. He did say that he doesn't like Wings. So he's kind of. It's called Common Wheel. He is kind of he runs.
Actually, he wrote a fantastic piece during the first blogger wars about how everybody should stay friendly regardless. I do remember it was a very...
well, if you're going to flag up what Robin McAlpine's written, which is a must read for everybody, also Roddy McLeod, Barhead Boy. Between the two of them, they identify what the problem with is in the party and also a possible route for the first step to get out of the mess.
Well, you know what I think. I will not repeat myself on this one. Anything else? Anybody?
Without being able to finish.
Just remember you're locked down tomorrow, everybody. No going out, no talking to people. You can breathe though, apparently.
Yeah, just to finish, Norrie, the figures had a wee jump again today in terms of numbers, but a drop in terms of test positivity down to 7.5%. I believe it's 5% is kind of the holy grail that they want to get under, because at that point spread is really not happening too deadly. But all the issues, all the ramping up, the increase in mobile testing and what have you, certainly the government are preparing for this to run into March, April, May time.
I get the impression, certainly the Scottish government, and I suppose the English Westminster government, they think at some point they're going to kill this. I think the Scottish government know this is going to run for years. I think it's going to be in corners and flaring up for a long time, and they seem to be thinking that way.
I think that the mention of passports and what Jason Leitch had to say about vaccination passports was interesting on that very topic, Norrie.
Can they do that? Do you really think that would work?
Well, apparently, what he said was that we might need he mentioned a vaccination passport for you to get into a nightclub. and a vaccine on the other end of the scale, a vaccination passport to obviously go abroad. Now that's a wide field.
Yeah, I think with today, with Nicola not being front and centre, today was a day for flying kites. As John Swinney had earlier, flew the kite that the schools is probably going to be back in February as people are expecting. And I think a lot of the talk on the likes of your mum's net and stuff like that, quite a lot of them are talking that they didn't expect the kids back till after Easter. Now that's the beginning of April.
I think there's a good solid argument for keeping everything shut down until we get down to
sounds sensible to me.
Single figure deaths.
The issue, there's part of me agrees with that, Norrie, but the issue is if you take it into April and May, you're effectively saying that 2021 is just going to be another write-off year for a bunch of businesses, and how many people at that point just go under?
No,
Yeah, but
it's all right. The banks will start handing out loans like sweeties.
Yeah, I'm sorry, mate.
That way they can get your house as well.
How many? Well, in Scotland, I think would cope because the Scottish government will find a way. But how many English kids are going to starve? They've already said that they're not feeding them. Well, I'm sorry, there was a fight on question time about whether they're going to feed them or not on the half-term break. But I didn't trust the UK government to keep poor children alive if this thing runs and runs and runs. I trust the Scottish government to make a far better attempt, but I do not trust the English government to
anyway, what's there a half-term break from?
No idea.
What date? Don't know.
No, half-term break's in the middle of February.
Yeah, but what's it a break from?
If we don't lock down as tight as possible, it is going to go on. I think we're going to be lucky to get to April. I'm thinking April, a bit of sunshine. But that, to my mind, is about the earliest date. I can't see it because we're still in the dead of winter. And shutting the schools, it just makes sense. And I'd sooner be under financially than under the ground. Thank you very much. You know.
Well, I'm sorry, mate, but you're relatively well off and on a fixed income. I don't think you grasp the difficulties that some people are having out there that are skint and have had no money coming in other than the meagre shite that this government thinks is a benefit.
I mean, that's one of the problems with our setup. There's three of us. As I've said before, I've got
Norrie, the figures for people getting knocked back. Liverpool City Council, I think we all kind of respect the Mayor of Liverpool. Well, maybe know that he's been done for racketeering or he's been lifted for it. But we all respect where he comes from, where his politics is. They're knocking back over 70% of people that are applying for hardship loans at the minute.
And they're not the only ones.
Aye, and if Liverpool are at 70%, what's it like in bloody Buckinghamshire?
Aye. Well, one of the interesting outcomes of this might well be the number of middle-class people who have a better understanding of benefits.
What, you mean when they go bankrupt?
Well, yeah. Exactly.
Well, that's one of the whole point, because they've screwed the working class over the decades. We never got any help from Blair, still anti-trade union. Now they've got to do in the middle class. These people that regard themselves as middle class, but actually they're annoying. Teachers, doctors, all those people that get that public money, well, they can't have it. Mm-hmm. This is what it's all about. They want to impoverish these people. They don't care.
Yeah, you're right, Phil. There's not much goodness left in screwing the working class, so they've got to start ringing the middle class.
No, they're going to kill the working class. That's why they don't really that bother. You know what I mean? There's too many people unproductive to the system.
Kill the working class and move the middle class down a notch.
That's the idea, yeah.
Well, that's a very cheerful note in which to go into the weekend, Norman.
And I'd like to wish you all a very, 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 very happy weekend. Whilst you ponder whether you'll be able to sell your house in order to pay your debts. Anyway. Stuart?
Well, I heard from David Buick, who a bully from the City of London. And he announced on television yesterday morning that apparently everybody's been because of we're locked down in the pandemic. Everybody's been squirreling away loads of money.
Oh, yeah.
And there's £1 trillion in bank accounts waiting to be spent as soon as we all get unlocked.
Well, that's not the only one. You not heard Tory candidate for Mayor of London, one of his latest bubbles.
I heard that one, right.
Massive homelessness there. And, you know, without a phase, why don't they save up a deposit to buy a house?
Incredible, eh? What about the Tory candidate for Glasgow that has been suspended today? Did you see that story?
No.
That's kind of a feel-good story for those of us who didn't like Tories.
Who was he feeling?
He basically got suspended. I think it was the Record actually doing a bit of journalism for once and actually exposing a fascist for being a fascist. They said that people that use food banks, they're not really hungry. Half of them are fat, and their biggest danger isn't malnutrition; it's diabetes. That shows how good the Tory party vetting is when they've let a scumbag like that through to be a candidate.
The photograph I saw of him, I don't think he's seen the cleanest for about 40 years.
Jimmy,
Anyway,
scumbag into a scumbag.
Right, shut up, everybody. Happy Friday. Thanks for being with us, Jimmy Hutton.
Cheers.
Ridge.
Cheers.
Lockhead.
Hello there.
Yeah. Thanks for listening, folks. And we'll have a day off tomorrow. Catch you all on Sunday. When, who knows? Maybe another Scottish political party will have another leader to look for.
Be take them to the last minute.
Cheers.
Graduation time. Yee!